I'm Chris Vaughn, and welcome to another episode in our Create series. We are here today with Kellie Fowler, who is a visual designer, illustrator, and fine artist. Her work has been featured and sold in galleries and silent auctions and appreciated by organizations such as Coca-Cola, UPS, Chick-fil-A Foundation, and the Atlanta Business League. Kellie joins us today to discuss creativity and self-expression through art. Kellie, welcome to In Her Company.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
So, why don't you start by, of course, telling us, what is your background that brought you to art? Why not anything else?
Now that is a very good question. I've been doing art for as long as I can remember. If you want to know from my parents, since I was 2. But the earliest reason I can think of was it was the most socially acceptable thing to do.
Okay.
Simply because as a child, I was a very outspoken character, as in, if you look different, I was going to tell you.
Oh.
It was that bad. So I learned that that's not a very well received attribute. So I ended up having to express myself through different mediums. And the one that stuck the most for me was art, because the stories I would hear or the people I would meet, whenever I saw something different or someone different, it was always a new story I wanted to express. And I knew I can't talk a mile a minute, so I immediately went for artwork because that is worth 1,000 words.
Yeah, obviously, because we're surrounded here by several of your pieces, and oh my gosh, the colors, the composition, it is clear that they are definitely telling a story. But why not metalworking? Do you feel that you could not have told the same story with metalworking, with basket weaving, or?
I think for those particular trades and skills, I feel like failure for me in those would have been a little bit harder for me to come back from. And I think with just visual art, when it came to pencil, paint, pen, and all of that, if I failed, it was a different experience to explore. Whereas I feel with things like metalworking and let's say, basket weaving, I can imagine those could be relaxing for other people and they found a way to express themselves. But for me personally, that would have been stressful.
So what about your initial experience though? So this was obviously a way that was acceptable for you. So in other words, you would keep your mouth shut.
And just make the pretty pictures.
Yeah, and make the pretty pictures. But what was your initial experience when you actually dove into art? Did you have any biases or misconceptions about art, or were there even any myths that you yourself busted?
The greatest myth busted in terms of art, I know I'm going a bit out of order with this question, but I promise you there is a payoff. But the greatest myth busted for me is art is not important. What the scary thing is, when I initially got into art, there was always someone telling me that that was not the correct path to go. So a lot of people would think, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm like, I want to be an artist. Teachers would rather me be a full-on actress than an artist, like a fine artist.
Oh, wow.
So I was just like, okay, everyone's telling me it's wrong to do this. Why can't I? So I would continue to explore it because, of course, I'm hard-headed.
You took no as a challenge.
Yeah, I took
Okay.
I took it as a challenge. Art for me made me realize that I could express myself in better ways. As I said before, it definitely helps with me understanding the world around me because, growing up, people telling me things at face value, I'm always asking why.
Right.
So it was hard for me to kind of understand that. So I was like, okay, whatever I can, I guess, mold in my own little world, it helps me understand, let's say, the person I'm talking to a lot better. Because it's like, okay, you could be saying this, but I can be hearing this. So that's partially what I've learned going into art. And then I realized creativity overall is a very important part of the human experience.
How so?
So growing up, we're always thinking, when you raise, let's say, a child, right? We're thinking, make sure, they know how to follow rules, follow directions, know how to read and write, and make sure they do something useful that benefits society.
Right.
A lot of society does not understand that expression is a large part of that, because with expression, you learn how to be polite to others, you learn how to care for others, you give the human experience that makes us human. Can you imagine if all these walls were gray and that's all you saw and saw no color?
No, no, I prefer not.
Exactly my point. So creativity, I really feel, is a very pivotal part of the human experience, no matter what medium you do decide to choose. And hence, the greatest myth being busted, art not being important. Art is a very important part of being a human being.
So you see it as a way to better express ourselves because we don't, even though our society in particular is so focused on performance, performance driven, goal oriented, but life is filled with more than simply tasks. So without having some method to express ourselves, then
Yeah, and you find yourself basically running on a hamster wheel for like the rest of your life. You don't understand the simple joys in life. The things that you think are simple joys are now not important to you. Like if it doesn't put food on the table or if it doesn't do this, then clearly it's not important. And I can see how that correlation would bring you to the point of art not being important. But as I said,
which is prevalent today. That's a common thought that art is just not important. Even beyond that, discussion goes beyond STEM and STEAM, which has increased in popularity over the past couple of decades. But the fact that art is not important, do you believe that's how people have been conditioned to view it? And by well-meaning statements such as, what do you want to do with your life, but go do something, that's important?
yes, absolutely. Like if you are conditioned to see like a part of yourself as not the most important thing, the first instinct is to put it off and focus on the things that are in front of you. But of course, art is in everything, even down to how books are designed, magazines are designed, or how even simple mechanisms to help with people everyday things are designed. You need art in everything. But again, because it's not the most important, it often leads to like people going, nope, if you can't feed yourself with this, don't do it. So it's just like, no, that is a myth. It is the most important thing you could possibly do alongside everything else. You can learn how to read and write, but make sure you know how to properly regulate yourself.
Yeah.
And I can't stress that enough.
Yeah. And we're going to touch on doing something to support yourself in a bit, but I want to focus on these canvases. Now, of course, these are anything but now, but what does the blank canvas represent to you?
A blank canvas is a story waiting to be told. It is an experience waiting to be had. And for some people, it is literally the cliff before they jump. Because, like, again, let's say if you have like a 5 foot tall canvas in front of you,
okay,
it gets intimidating, right? Because you find yourself either drawing something really big and not have enough room, or you find yourself doing something really small and go, oh no, there's so much ground to cover. You can tell two different people from that particular method.
Oh, wow.
So, like, when I say it's an experience waiting to be had or a story waiting to be untold, to be told, it's like when you see that, you're like, oh, okay, I have a lot I got to do. Or, no, I can't wait to spend every moment with it. So, a lot of people, it's intimidating at first, but for the people that aren't afraid to take the leap, they find themselves having a great time and excited to see how it ends.
So, with your experience, like, were you intimidated at first, or did you intentionally choose smaller canvases? Because these are a great example, but you have some pretty sizable canvases, and you're also a muralist. So, how has what you said affected your own journey?
Honestly, I started big first.
Did you really?
Yes. So
you just dove right in.
Yes, because I was like, I need enough room Because I remember like the birthday gifts I would get are like these like 9 by 12s or 8.5, 11 sheets of paper. And my dad would tell me, fill every corner of that canvas before you turn to the next page. Because it's going to be a while before you get another one.
Oh, okay.
So I'm like, I was like, oh, okay. So I would take my time on pages that small, and I'm like, I still don't have enough room. And then that mindset turned into, it doesn't matter what size canvas, but it's not going to be small, but it gets something at least this big. And that's how it's always been. Is like I will always do some very sizable canvases for some of my visions. And if anything is really small, I feel like it's more so to make sure the story is significant for you to see at first glance. But I'm always designing big first.
That's wonderful. So where do some of your creative influences come from, or your um, ideas for what wind up being your creations? Where do you get your ideas from?
Now, if you were to look at any of my early works before 2020, it would be the stories of other people, people I actually met, because I had the privilege to grow up and see so many different perspectives. So it's like, okay, it's based off of this individual or somebody I saw down the street. Nowadays, I feel like a good portion of my concepts are like personal messages to myself, as well as like messages waiting, for people that are waiting to hear them. Because it's like when you do art for such a long time and find yourself having to, I guess, display it to the public, you find yourself in a box. So it's like, okay, I'm done with this. Let me just now do something that I feel more attuned to. And some of the influences, of course, as you can see, there's a very African Haitian influence in a good portion of my work. I didn't realize that that's what I was doing at first, to be fair. I only saw it as silhouetted people with adornments, because that's how I would see people, is like literally how they carried themselves first. I'm like, oh, that person looks pretty. The first thing I'm thinking is their shoes are beat up. They must have been walking for a while.
Okay.
Or like they have something hand knit. They either have someone that cares for them very much, or they are repurposing something that was very loved, or they made it themselves. So like I'm often thinking, okay, the person is the background, but what's on them or how they speak is more important. And that's like the tone of most of my work.
Okay. So that was a revelation to you then, because those influences were there, but you didn't even realize it. It just came out of you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean,
Was that surprising?
I mean, yes, because like first of all, when you have someone cry in front of a piece of work of yours, and you're like,
Oh,
like someone has cried. I've only got to see that experience twice. It was very fulfilling to know that I made someone feel something, but at the same time, because I was really young, I was like, I don't know what to do with this.
yeah.
I was like, I don't know what to do. Wow. I didn't realize that my work affected people like that. And that's when I realized, oh, people see themselves in these works. And I was like, oh, that's important.
That connection.
Yeah, of
Okay.
course.
So through your work, they were able to see their own story, or perhaps feel that you had told.
Yes.
Ah, okay. Another medium. So how do you know when your work is complete?
That question is, I don't know.
You don't.
like I kid you not, there'll be finished works I'm looking at. I'm like, I could have added this.
Just from your habit of filling up space.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, no, this needs more flowers. This needs another person. So there is no like there is no defined timeline unless it's a commissioned piece with a deadline. There is no end with the work. There really isn't. It's like I feel like when we're close to finish, it's because I don't have the energy to keep going on this piece and I'm ready to do something new.
Okay.
But never a set, my work is finished. I wish I was like that. No, I'm like, this is nice. I like it. But it could, let me try something. That's me every single time.
Okay. So even though it's on a canvas, you feel that for the majority of your pieces, they could continue to speak, in other words. Okay.
Yes.
If you so allowed it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what about the opposite direction though? Have you ever started out on a piece? I mean, excited and looking forward to it and everything, but then wound up just totally scrapping it.
So many times.
Really?
So many times.
Okay.
As I said before, this is the one skill that if failure were to happen, I'm not afraid of it. So there are pieces that changes all the time. So like if I'm like, I hate this piece, don't like it, it's going to be in the back of the closet for at least a couple months. And I probably would have did like maybe 6 other pieces by then. And then I'll look at it and go, oh, hey, free canvas, paint it back over. So like when I find myself needing to take a break, I'm okay with letting go.
Okay.
Because I know for some people in the same profession, for me, it's like they erase it over and over and find themselves more overwhelmed and overworked and like
Counterproductive.
yeah, and they're just like, I don't like it. It doesn't look like this artist I look up to, or this art.
Unless they're intentionally trying to mirror that as an exercise, but it's their art.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. A lot of people getting into art, they're always like, it doesn't look the way I need it to. It doesn't look the way I really have it, or, I didn't paint a certain way, like, or have the same equipment. People get intimidated with this stuff all the time, myself included. But at the same time, I was just like, every time I have to stop, it's okay. It's going in the back of the closet.
Okay.
It's always going to be in the closet.
Gotcha. Okay. But in line with it, so when did you actually begin to see value in your own work, your own creations? Because that's a valid point. Like the artist may be inspired by someone else, but that doesn't mean that your work has to mirror that. So, and then when we create something ourselves, we often compare it against something that's well established, that has gone through many iterations in order to reach that point with our just starting out. So when did you begin to see value, or when did you start valuing your own work?
I was lucky enough to value my art at a really young age. I grew up in a environment where you made your own money. It was never you get a 9 to 5 or none of that. No, I grew up literally with everybody making their own money. And I was like, okay, I don't know what trade I have that's really important until literally one of my own clients at the time, or rather my family's clients, saw it. And they were like, hey, would you like to do a showcase? I didn't realize my art was that nice.
Wow.
Because when you're around like great artists like Charles Bibbs and Gilbert Young all over your like home, you're like, your art doesn't look like that, Kelly. So chances
Comparison.
yeah, no, comparison. The biggest thief of joy.
Yeah.
But like I was just like going, these are really cool people. You're not those guys, right? So I was minding my business. Literally, I found the value of my art through minding my own business. It's crazy. But like I was very grateful to have that start, because artwork takes work.
Yeah.
It takes work. You not only have to be able to stand on your own images, be able to create it, but you also have to feed yourself with it. That is a full-time job.
Yeah.
That is work. That's absolute work. So yeah, I saw value in not only just how people received it, I saw that I could feed myself with it. I saw that I can, based off of my confidence alone with these pieces,
Yes.
I'm like, yeah, no, there's plenty of value in the work that I have, and it will last a long time. So I feel like my work is timeless in a way. At least I would hope so. But yeah, that's how I found the value in my work.
You mentioned a key point, that art is work. So what do you have to say to the starving artist stereotype?
Now, funny thing is, I understand why it exists. I don't necessarily agree. I understand why it exists.
Well, the stereotype is this.
Yeah, because again, like I said, creativity is not seen as a very important part of the human condition, let alone a working part of the human condition. Like if you think about the amount of creative jobs that are in the world, there are a lot. But because a lot of people are like, oh, I can do this with my eyes closed or with a code, right? They tend to leave those guys out. And it is the worst thing you could possibly do. As I said before, art really does take work.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they're like, oh, I could just create enough work, get enough eyes on it, and I can make the money. That's the starving artist, at least in my eyes. The well-fed artist, my favorite term, the well-fed artist is the
Like
one.
that. Well-fed. Starving versus well-fed.
Yeah,
Okay.
the well-fed artist, the thick artist, if you will. So, with those individuals, not only are they producing the work, making sure they get enough eyes on it, or let's say they don't have enough eyes on it, they got the business side down. They understand that just like you do a 9 to 5, or let's say a salary-based job, you need to calculate your hours, how much you're worth per hour, how much per project. You still have to do all of those things if, let's say, you did this for a full-time job. Heck, there are people I know that retired from different industries just to be a fine artist. And they're like, you know what, in the remainder of my life, yeah, like there's like a few individuals I've met. And they're like, you know what, the remainder of my time, I'd rather do something I enjoy.
Yeah.
And that's important. Be able to enjoy what feeds you also. It doesn't always have to be like the primary thing that feeds you, but enjoy what feeds you. So yeah, no, I don't agree with starving artists. I agree with well-fed, thick, buttermilk, cornbread artists. That's what I agree with. I don't agree with the starving artist.
But that's a healthy perspective though, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because so often we even further divide that into not what's important work and unimportant work, but also what's linear and what's creative. And what we've heard during the series, not only from you, but some of the other female creatives we've interviewed, is that it's both of them together. It's linear and creative. It's business and art. It's one and the other. It's further expressing yourself in the fact that you value it and that you actually charge others for what it's worth, though.
Yeah, I mean, just think it down to its base level.
So that they're not diametrically opposed, in other words.
Yeah, like did you put time into this? Yes. Did this cost you money to create? Absolutely. Does this person want to pay you for your services and your time? Let's hope yes, right? That's all it is. It is time and money spent for a product that someone else is going to enjoy for, let's say, years to come. It is literally a product-based model or a service-based model of, let's say, you're doing murals or commissions, right? Still the same at its base level. So I really wish people would take that out of, oh, because it's creative, I shouldn't pay you that much. No. Absolutely not. If I broke my back trying to carry a 5-foot canvas into your house, I'm like, let's say, painting in your house, and let's say you got a dog running circles around you. No, I would like to be compensated for my time.
Exactly.
I'd rather be compensated for my time before it becomes lawyer's compensation. You know what I mean?
Yes. All right, that's a whole nother discussion. But yeah, I totally get you on that. As much as you enjoy what you do, though, was there ever a time where you felt like giving up, or in fact, that you gave up? And if so, what brought you back?
I would say pretty much in a good portion of my art career, I have had many long hiatuses in my work. And it's usually due to whatever life is throwing at me in the moment. So it's like, okay, it's still the most important thing in the world to me, but I don't have the mental capacity right now. So what will always bring me back is I have a new story to tell. Or I have a new journey to explore. I don't necessarily, I don't want to put out work that feels empty. Because, like, if I'm feeling empty at the time, I don't want people to.
That'll be reflected in your creation.
Oh, of course. I mean, there are some of my brightest works are probably the most melancholic works I've actually created. Fun fact.
Okay.
So, like, to know that when I do take a break, it's because I need it. It's really something I truly need. Like, if let's say I'm working full time in just art, you can end up producing hollow work, and then you're chasing a high that you can't necessarily get because of that.
Okay.
Whereas if you can take a break, if you back away from stuff, you can come back refreshed. You can come back happy. So usually whenever I do come back to stuff, again, like I said, it's a new story. So always breaks are much more prioritized and creative.
So even in this, and because that's another thing, another stereotype I believe, or that people have towards art, is that because it's creative, you can't burn out because it's supposed to be fun, right? You're doing this just because you want to do, and it's creative, it's artsy, or whatnot, which all they are being used with a negative connotation.
I mean, I could see how that could happen. Like, I can already think of 3 artists off the top of my head that people are always referring to when they think of that. Like, you could think of Basquiat. He died, like, literally, I think at 27, cocaine addiction. You know why? Because he had it because he thought he could make art faster. And on top of that, they were forcing him to try to do as much art as he possibly could towards the end of his career.
Oh my God.
And then you got Francis Bacon. Now, honestly, his art is weird. I like it, but it's weird. But like, for him, he was going through a tragic loss at the time of someone he really cared about in his final exhibition. And he himself, he lived on to have a very long life, but at the same time, his particular life outside of his work, I would personally say it's a lot more interesting, but probably for all the wrong reasons.
Okay.
Like, a lot, so I can see how people can stereotype an artist being either a tortured artist or an artist with like infinite time on their hands, and they immediately expect you to. Heck, most art schools sleep. Who is she? Most art schools, I kid you not, you have a deadline. Let's say you got to make like maybe 6 charcoal drawings in like 12 hours, and that's me being like really nice.
Oh wow.
Like, the art industry as a whole, at least when you're trying to be studied in art, it's often like the most work intensive thing and the most critical whenever you want like a particular grade and stuff. So I can see how people can go, oh, you're supposed to run that way, only to find out, let's say, you can only be a graphic designer at like 45K a year.
Yeah, because that pacing is not typically sustainable.
It never is. And
Okay.
most artists literally die from that. So it's just like, always prioritize breaks wherever you can. And that's probably why most people will tell you, hey, if you're going to pursue a creative career, have a backup. Because we haven't learned yet, or at least the overall whole of it is still selling that you need to be fast.
Wow.
So you always need to take a break. Otherwise, guess what? You're not necessarily gonna have like an addiction like Basquiat, but you're gonna be like, your life that you think that you had many years to live will be cut short if you put yourself in a box like that. So like, yeah, no, it really is important to have those kinds of breaks.
Yeah. So even within art, as with anywhere else, margin is very much a part of that grind. Yeah.
Yeah. Time, margin, capacity, public appearances. Think a movie star, but you still have to produce a product. You're not like going to a set, you're not getting water, you're not doing any of that. More times than not, you're like, oh, you have an art show in 3 weeks. And for most people, like, you would think they're painting all the time. So they clearly have enough pieces. No, let's say they're a very popular artist. Most of their stuff is gone.
Yeah.
And let's say
and they have no pieces to show because they are well-fed artists, right?
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So
that can be stress.
Oh
my gosh.
It is stress.
Yeah. Wow.
Yes. Very stressful. So just that's like going into like the back end of art. But I say that to say art is not a dark place. The industry it inhabits right now is a dark place. Art itself will never be a dark place.
Gotcha.
But like I said, whatever giants they expect a lot from you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, take
Yeah.
your breaks. Take your breaks.
Yeah, take a break. Take
please,
a break.
please take your breaks. Nobody's looking for you. Take a break.
Because that's part of what makes you more creative also, because the brain does need need rest. And, part of that stress is, unlike walking onto a set, if a person is an actress, those lines were created for you. You didn't have to come up with them. Whereas with art, this is coming from you. This is your creation. You're not copying anyone. You're not, like putting it on a machine just to reproduce. This is you. And that expression may vary each and every time you even attempt it. So now you've already shared quite a few insights, but what is one thing that you wish people knew about art?
I really wish people knew that art, even though there's so many moving parts, when you start, it's really not that hard.
Okay.
When you start, it's not that hard to start. The harder parts is you learning different aspects of art. The harder part is you figuring out materials align with you the best. Sometimes crayons doesn't work for everybody, Like for me, it definitely didn't. I found out paint did. Like the journey itself, it's not going to be difficult, but it's going to be challenging. But when you start, it literally could be as simple as picking up a piece of paper, a tablet, or a tool. And with that said, just know once you start, not every day is going to be easy, but keep on going. If you need a break, pull back. It is fine. That's all I'm going to really say on that. When you start, it's really easy.
Yeah.
It's not the worst thing in the world.
And you even get to set your own timeline. So how about that?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. How can our listeners and viewers reach you?
All right. Well, you can reach me on Instagram at KellieAnnArt or on my website, kellieanndesigns.com. I don't have many places to reach me nowadays. I used to have like so many avenues where you could, but now I'm just like, no, if there's less to manage, it's easier for me that way. Because then I
Streamline.
Yeah, streamline it. Because I would very much like to put myself in a space where I enjoy art fully again, instead of always having to see it as a business model. But those are the two places you can find me.
Great. Last question. What does creativity mean to you?
Creativity is the raw energy that you are born with to express yourself and to regulate and to live. Creativity is the blood of your soul. That's what creativity is to me.
Well said.
Thank you.
Kellie, thank you for being with us today.
Appreciate it.
And to you, our viewers and listeners, I hope that you have enjoyed not only hearing from Kellie, but this wonderful set that we have here today featuring her pieces. I hope that you see that art, in fact, and creativity, in fact, is important, and that it allows us to express ourselves in so many ways that words simply can't. Once again, I am Chris Vaughn. This is In Her Company.